For today's presentation, we have resumes with impact, and it's all about creating strong bulleted points. I would like to start off by presenting myself. I am Nayeli Lopez, a peer consultant here at the SARC Center, and I'll go ahead and pass it on.
Thank you, Nayeli. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. My name is Alina. I'm also another peer consultant at the SARC.
And then we also have Carissa with us here today. I would like for all of you to know that if you ever have a question, go ahead and type it into the Q&A section of the chat, and we'll go ahead and keep updated with that. So here we have a resume overview where we listed the sections you should have on your resume, and it always starts off by the objective, and then it is followed by your education, your professional experience, as we can see here on the resume example provided. And as you can see, it's very concise, 2 bullet points. It's very straightforward, starts with an action verb, advise, correspond, organize, creative. After professional experience, it is followed by your co-curricular experience. So if you were in any on-campus organization or club, that's something you can include there, as well as volunteer experience. And at the very end, you will include a list of your skills. Then we have applying the STAR method to resumes, which this is usually used in interviews, but we will apply this method to resumes, but always keep in mind to keep it concise because resumes are supposed to be very straightforward and short. And we're gonna start off with the situation, which is understanding the context of your role in a previous job or experience. This is where you identify any challenges that you would like to highlight for the hiring manager committee to know. And that is then followed by task, which there you would describe the solution action you took towards the challenge you identified and overcame. And that is then followed by action, where you recount the details for the steps you took to handle the situation. Here you would note the skills necessary to successfully reach your solution. And then finally, results, which could be measured or told in your resume through a quantifiable explanation, which results in the stem from your contributions. The results there are the value you provided to the team or company. So anything that was the outcome of that, you would want to explain here on the result. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Alina for this part.
Thank you so much, Nayeli. So as she mentioned, the STAR method is really important, and usually the STAR method is used to kind of guide the structure and the thought process when you're at an interview and answering a behavioral question. But we wanted to be able to use that and apply that to resumes as well, to also structure like your thought process to kind of recollect what you've done in the past, your experiences, and like what skills you want to present to a recruiter. So in terms of condensing STAR to creating strong bullet points on your resume, we want to highlight three things. So first, to start off, having an action word to start off your bullet point is really important. So make sure to have strong descriptive action words that begin the bullet point to show the recruiter that like you've done specific things. So for example, if you've participated in a program for outreach, think about what specifically you've done in that program. So for example, maybe you've coordinated and supervised the program at a local high school, etc., right? And we want to be able to highlight those specific things that tell the recruiter, oh, you did coordination and supervising, which kind of shows like some communication, some leadership skills that you wouldn't, or a recruiter wouldn't really be able to obtain from just seeing participated, for example. And secondly, we want to emphasize having quantifiable results. So this means using numbers to highlight your measurable results. So for example, if you were in an organization and you were part of like the recruiting team, you can mention, oh, I recruited and secured 250 students. So that kind of shows you like the scale of how many people you've recruited to your organization, meeting our goal of 50% increase in whatever. So 50% increase is a lot, and I'm sure a recruiter would be like able to kind of gauge how much you actually contributed to your organization, which is really important, right? So we want to highlight that to our recruiters. Thirdly, we want to make sure to have concise statements. So again, just to mention, like the STAR method is generally used for interviews in terms of like answering questions verbally to the interviewer. But when we want to apply that to resumes, we want to make sure to include all the important and relevant information into around 1 to 2 lines. So as you saw in the sample earlier, and we will show that again later on, the bullet points were 2 lines each. And here's an example to kind of apply some components of the STAR to a concise statement. Surveyed areas of improvements and tracked progression in order to improve the quality of service. So surveying areas of improvement kind of touches on the task and action that you took, and then what was the result? Improve the quality of service of whatever, like your company or yeah. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this is going to be a personal example that I will be sharing. So in terms of like how I've used STAR and applied that to my resume, I'm going to share a summer intern position that I was in the summer of 2018. So let's start with situation. In terms of the situation, my role was being a summer intern at the Second Harvest Food Bank of Orange County. And I guess one of the challenges that I faced, which ended up being a project that I worked on, was that the new 2018 Tax Cut and Job Act was potentially going to affect nonprofit organization. And that's something that, the Second Harvest Food Bank really wanted to know more about to be able to combat that challenge. So in terms of task, what I was able to do was research the effects of the policy on nonprofits by reading and summarizing articles and papers that were available online. That was the solution, and in terms of the specific action and steps that I took, I synthesized that information, I jotted it all down, and then I presented all this information, or the important information, to the executives. And the result and the value that I added to the company was that I contribute to the nonprofit's understanding of this new Tax Cut and Job Act. And as a note, in this specific example, which is 1 line or 2 lines of a bullet point on my resume, I didn't have any quantifiable information that was applicable to this bullet point. So while we do encourage you to add numbers whenever you can, like there are going to be times where it's not going to apply specifically to like certain projects or whatever, and that's totally okay. So again, we want to highlight 3 key things when you're applying STAR to resumes. Having action words to start off your bullet point, having quantifiable results whenever possible, and making sure that your statement is concise. So here's an example that I took from my resume to kind of summarize all of this into a bullet point. I said that I evaluated the financial, philanthropic, and community effects of the 2018 Tax Cut and Job Act on nonprofit organizations and synthesized all relevant information for a presentation to senior level executives. So let's kind of break this down. So in terms of situation, I mentioned that the challenge was there was a Tax Cut and Job Act that I was trying to learn more about. So I mentioned that 2018 Tax Cut and Job Act and the effect on nonprofit organizations. So in terms of task, I mentioned using action words that I evaluated the effects and synthesized the relevant information. And that kind of ties into the action as well. So in terms of action, I synthesized this information and created a presentation. And the result is that I was able to present to the executives and be able to contribute to their understanding of this policy. Next slide, please. Great, so here is a sample resume that is on that is provided by UCI. So I just wanted to take a note here. So UCI, the Division of Career Pathways, SARC, we all have like a lot of resources that you as students can use to learn more about resumes. And of course, like you are all here in this webinar, so great job for taking this step and learning more about how to build strong resumes, right? So there are resources online though. So I think it's divided by departments or schools where you can see sample resumes. So here's an example of a student in the School of Social Sciences and their resume and their experiences that I kind of just copy and pasted onto this PowerPoint. So here I wanted to ask you all to think, how can we use the STAR method? And are action words used? Does this show specific results in a clear way? And as Nayeli mentioned earlier, you can see advise, correspond, organized, created as the first word of all of these bullet points. So we can definitely see that action words are being used here. And one thing to note also is if you can see the management intern under professional experience, this is something that this student is working on till today, so September 2019 to present, right? So because it's a current thing, you can keep the action words in present tense versus like co-curricular experience in AMP, the AMP Leader Mentorship Program, that was something in the past. So they have past tense, so organized and created. In terms of specific results in clear way, I think like this is definitely a great example of being able to tie STAR and their experiences into a concise 1 to 2 line bullet point. Feel free to ask more questions in the Q&A if you have any, but we can move on to the next slide. So, so we just wanted to thank you for being here and listening to our webinar about resume and bullet points. Nayeli is going to actually mention additional information that we will provide to you by email, but she's going to show you a handout later. And before that though, we want to let you know that you can schedule a consultation today with either the peer consultants, so for example, me and Nayeli, the professional staff, so Carissa is one of the professional staffs, and Patrick, and also the graduate student advisors. So you can go ahead and make an appointment virtually on the SARC website. There's a link for UCI, for the UCI appointment system, and there you can you can log in with your UCI account, and then kind of briefly mention like, oh, why you, what is the reason for your consultation, so that we kind of know, and then select the date and time. You can also contact us through email. Our email is sarc@uci.edu. And feel free to follow us on social media. We also have a YouTube account where we're going to post this recording, and you all can watch it afterwards. But that's the conclusion of our presentation for now. Thank you all for joining, and Nayeli is going to show a handout for more information that we will also send to you all. But if you have any additional questions, feel free to type in the Q&A so we can answer that afterwards.
So as Alina mentioned, we went ahead and created a resource handout for all of you where you will find more extensive information that was provided in the PowerPoint. Right here, you will find the STAR method once again with leading questions that can help you guide your resume, as well as the PAR framework, which is problem, action, result. And then we also have action verb list. So just to kind of navigate this around, the websites create various examples. I know Lena provided hers, but here we have more general ones. They go ahead and go step by step on filling in the situation, task, action, and result, and then how they put it all together, the final statement for the resume. So it really does a good job of walking you through. And then as well as the PAR framework, there's a lot of examples there as well. They have a before and after that you can check out. As you can see here, it's one simple sentence responsible for data entry, and then the after it's a lot more extensive, but because it does have a better explanation, so you can see the improvement there. And then we have the strong action verbs. So right here, they're just lists that are provided for you to use just in case you can't think of any. They're organized by management and leadership action verbs, communication action verbs, research and analysis. So depending on what type of description you're aiming for, the verbs are here, so they're nicely laid out for you. Then I also went ahead and included a workshop that will be happening soon for career division of career pathways. And you can go ahead and register. It's happening. Oh, sorry, this actually already happened. But they have workshops up there that you can look up in their events link right here, link below, and they will host the various. They even have like you could submit your resume and they will go ahead and look over it instantly during this time. If you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the Q&A, and this handout will be provided in the email that we will be sending after this presentation for your own convenience. If there's any questions, feel free to type them in.
I think so far there's no questions besides the where are the links, where can we access the links? So just to clarify again, we will be sending a follow-up email, thank you email afterwards, where we'll provide all of our links, especially to the presentation slides and the handout, and then a recording will also be posted on YouTube, and we will give you a link to that as well. I think there's another question. Should a resume only contain relevant experience? That's a good question.
I would recommend that you do, put information that is relevant to what you're applying for, just because it make you look like a good candidate for the position, since you have experience that relates. But if you don't necessarily have that, you can write down whatever you do have and kind of tie it into how you can use that experience for the position that you're applying to.
Yeah, and if I can add on, I think that's super important what Nayeli said about tying it into the position. So while maybe you've had, for example, I had my summer intern position, right? And there were a lot of different things that I did. But if I wanted to apply for a job that was looking for communicative skills, I can kind of change my resume bullet points and add something that shows that I'm a good communicator, and be able to have, while it's the same, I guess, position and job title, I can still change what is in the actual bullet points in terms of the content and tie that into the specific position and kind of look through their job description and see what they're looking for, and try my best to, tie that in if possible. Yeah, so I see another question in the chat. It says, if I did an internship when I was in high school, can I include it on my resume? Great question. Yeah, I can take that. So I would say yes. You can include it on your resume. I think as you gain more experience, high school stuff would kind of trickle out of your resume because you want to have a lot of recent experience on your resume. But if that's really relevant to your position, or if you think that it's still a really strong experience that you want to add and showcase, definitely you can totally add that to your resume.
And then there's another question. So all bullet points be presented as concise statements. Yes, you should try your best to really keep them concise and very direct. I did read something about when you use action verbs, and sometimes they insert it into generators and they just pick up those certain words. It could really help. So yes, resume should be short, and then you can always be extensive in your interview. But resumes is just something pretty straightforward for the hiring committee. Are there any other questions? You're very welcome. So I see there's another question on, do you recommend putting a skills section or just experience? So as in the, I believe it was the second slide, we do recommend you have an objective section, and then they're like followed by other sections, and experience and skills were both included. So usually your experience would be on one of the top big chunks of the resume, and then at the very bottom of your resume is usually where those are written down. The skills are even more concise than what you would write for experience. I don't know if Alina has anything to add to.
Yeah. Skill sections, are definitely, it's generally put on the bottom of your resume. It's kind of like a lot of people put languages if they speak multiple languages and skills. If they have some technical knowledge on like some coding programming languages, they put that in skills. I think that's generally what is in skills, but if that's not something that you necessarily have or want to highlight for a specific position, like I think the experience part is more important. Being able to highlight like what specifically you did in previous positions and showcasing that. Unless, I don't know if Carissa has anything to add on with that too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alina. I think this is a very important question, but yes, ultimately experience is definitely a priority, and think of your resume as everything that is most important is going to be highlighted towards the top of the resume, and then anything that's kind of lesser importance kind of goes towards the bottom of the resume. But yes, I think you kind of nailed it there. And just to also kind of tie in with the other sections, so you can have an objective, but again, if you are running out of room, that could be the first thing that kind of comes off. And then of course there's education, then experience, and then you can tie it in with some other things like skills or research or activities or extracurricular involvements or volunteer experiences.
It looks like we don't have any more questions this far. I don't know if any of you want to type one last question in. If not, we really want to thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you taking the time to, come and join us. And thank you all also for asking questions.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. If you have any additional questions that you might that might come up in your head later on, feel free to schedule an appointment or email SARC too. We're always here to help. And if Chris has any other last words, I think we can close it off.
No, I think we're all good. Thank you all so much for joining, and we'll go ahead and close this webinar. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.